welcome to another episode of Design in Progress. This is going to be our follow up interview with the designers of, excuse me, designers of territories, tribes at war, or territory, right? Not plural. My apologies. Uh, so joining us are the three designers. We've got Evan Morris.
We
Say.
going?
There we go. Pierre Pratt
Howdy.
and Nate, just Nate.
Hey there.
If you have somehow stumbled upon this interview and didn't watch the previous video, you should probably go watch the previous video, or you might be a little bit confused. Which should have been posted probably yesterday or earlier today, or who knows how my editing will go and how fast I'll be able to edit things together. But um, the link will be below in the description. Go watch us play this game; it's super fun, and then come back and listen to us talk. Um, so here's where I'll start us off with maybe the more important question. Then we can go into more general questions. Um, what was the initial inspiration for this game? How did this happen?
I'll take a
Actually,
stab.
oh, okay, you got it. Right?
Actually, no, Nate, you go. I been talking.
We were on a car, like a road trip. This was years prior to even beginning the game, and we kind of started just pitching back and forth this idea where we blended elements of games that we loved
Hmm.
together, and then we really liked this idea of moving back and forth and having these spots where you could kind of attack.
Hmm.
So it's still a card game, but it almost touches into board game territory. But movement was kind of placement and movement were going to be a big part of it. And
Right.
then you can see sort of and then years later we decided to make it, and then years after 4 years after testing we finally launched it.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit almost of some MOBAs where you have the lanes going on. You have to be doing kind of lane management, and stuff is coming at you, and you have to deal with specific heroes. And
Definitely. And there's a little, and again, like trap, the idea of the trap cards, or all hidden spells as we have them.
right,
And um but we wanted to, again, and to differentiate enough too where our resources are different. And yeah, so
yeah. And you guys said was said at the end of our last video, you guys the Kickstarter is ongoing right now.
yes. Yes.
Great, that's awesome. Yeah, which I'll also include the link below. So we got Kickstarter. I was gonna ask, because I don't think when I talked to you guys at Gen Con if you had started the Kickstarter yet or not, or maybe I just missed it because it was late at night and we were moving fast. um,
We launched during Gen Con, so I guess the timing it
it,
could have
it
depended.
right, it
Yeah,
might have
but
been the first night. I know also that it, like I said, it was very late at night. It was like towards the very end of the day, and I had a very long day, so I might have just missed something. Been like, yeah, sure, yeah, Kickstarter, that makes sense. um, what? And I'm gonna ask you. Each of you can answer this. What is your favorite individual part of the design of this game? What's the thing that really tickles your brain that you're super happy about how it's turned out so far? Why don't you start us off, Nate, since you were answering already?
Um, well, trying to get little combos working, like the engine of any of the decks, like kind of how you're doing and how he started to with discard.
Hmm.
So that that is what tickles my brain. Is like if I have two Rakshasas grave sites out and I'm discarding a bunch of stuff that I'm gonna bring back to my hand, and I'm just like pumping guys. Yeah.
Right.
So that kind of interaction I really like.
Those little mini combos that just start to build up and up and up, and then all of a sudden they're a giant wave hitting you. How about you, Evan? What's your favorite uh,
Yeah.
detail here?
So I think really we spent a lot of time working rounding out balance of the game, and actually one of the best things was so back in 2021 I met people from Gen Con
Hmm.
and I shipped the game out to them and actually met a lot of people along the way where it was good getting a lot of different insights and different views and the people who play different types of games and actually helped it really helped us with all our refinements, right? So we had people that were, they primarily worked in board games.
Hmm.
They were very familiar with, like they had no familiar with PCGs or card games in general. And then I obviously worked with, we shipped the game and got some play testing from people that were familiar with card games. And one thing that was nice was just sort of getting the balance. And I'm a data scientist by trade, so
Mm.
it's like tinkering with the algorithm to, get the optimal result. And I found that adding in the human element of reaching out to these people, zooming with them, um, complete strangers, but making good connections along the way was a rewarding experience. So
Right.
yeah,
I always find that it is surprising when you play your game with a new group of people that you haven't been playing with. We all have our kind of test groups. It's our 4 or 5 friends who've played the game 5 or 6 times, and you're like, okay, yeah, or even if they're playing it the first time, they play it a very specific way, and then all of a sudden you reach out to a different chunk of people and you bring them in, and they just come at it from just way out of left field, and you're just like, I've never seen anyone do that before. That is a way to do it. Yeah, it's just it's so great to see it from another point of view that you would never have thought of before, and be like, oh yeah, I need to fix that. That's broken.
yeah, and it's interesting too the different right like how the different lenses that people approach and what they think is really strong, and other people will be like, no, that's not that strong, but yeah, after years of sort of amalgamating that, you get a
Mm.
good sense of where your game's at. And Gen
Right.
Con was great, right? That was one thing we had was doing the first exposure play testing hall.
Mm.
Um, I think there were yeah, we had just a lot of great experience there. So
Yeah. I mean, it's also one of the benefits of doing a card game like this where there's so many different abilities that you really can kind of hit all of the kind of things that someone might want. Um, that if someone's just like, nah, I don't care a crap about spells. I'm just gonna run a bunch of dudes. They're gonna come out fast. They're gonna hit. And you don't need to worry about that person. They're like, whatever, it's okay. Not every
yeah,
part of this
yeah,
game is gonna
exactly.
be for you, but one of the parts of this game is going to be for you.
And and the other thing that's kind of, let's say, it's nice too and neat is so we have 165 cards, which seems
Mm,
like a pretty limited set,
mm,
but that's sort of like the framework we were working with, where it's like you in the amount of time it takes to really sculpt those 165 so that they interact with each other and nothing's too cracked
right, right.
yeah, it's very integral. So
Right, and every single time you add one more card to that, you have to make sure that it doesn't break one of the other 165. So every card you
Yeah.
add,
yeah.
it's exponentially more work. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Hear that.
Rune knows this well. Pierre knows this very well. Because he and I, we had so many back and forth testings throughout the years as well.
Mm,
We were slowly expanding the card pool so we could accomplish allowing all those different play styles, right? So you can have
mm,
your, for a better like your Timmy play style where it's like, yeah, I just want to smash, or you can have your more your slow, like controlling play style. Like so,
right.
accomplishing those play styles but keeping it in a narrow set is was a fun craft.
Hmm.
I think we actually had over 200 cards at one point, but we scaled down just to
Right.
give it a tighter.
We scale down cards, and we also scale down abilities. We had more, like right now there's I think 10 active abilities, and there's some passive one, or 10 passives or something like that, and a
Mm.
few more active. But it used to be a lot more, but we just like consolidated it.
Yeah, which is always kind of a tricky thing when you're doing a card game that's kind of self-contained, especially. You know, we're so used to games like Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or something where they have so many years worth of build up where it's okay that they have like 30 or 50 different abilities, and it's like yeah, it's, you know, 'cause we've had 10 years to learn or 20 years to learn those 50 abilities or something like that. But when you're like, here is the game, you have to learn all of these abilities. It's like, okay, we got to make sure that they're tight, that they really make sense, that they can convey. I think you guys did a great idea of conveying those abilities just by like using the words, being like, it's this.
And, and we kind of intended, so like after a single game or two, maybe between two people, that every ability will have been used. Like they'll have seen every ability. There's nothing that's laying in some other deck that they didn't get to see,
Right.
and then they'll just understand what they want from their interactions.
Right. Um, sorry. Let's let's finish. We went off on a tangent. Let's finish with Pierre's favorite part of the design, and then I have more questions.
I'll say that it started off when I was brought on board. It felt like chess,
Mm,
which isn't good or bad. It's just that's how it played and how it felt like. And that appeals to a certain demographic, but it might be unfamiliar for people playing this type of game. And as it progressed, it's gotten to this state where you have, it feels entirely unlike chess, but you still have this very tactical and strategic gameplay experience. So what I'm really enjoying is being able to get into my own headspace, right? And tinker with things and move stuff around. And I have all of these things going on, and it's my turn. And I don't have to worry about someone saying, stop, you're not allowed to play that, right?
right.
Like, a counter spell.
Right. Yeah.
But at the
Hold
same
on.
time,
I'm going to hold priority while that's on the stack, and you're like, oh my god, I
yeah,
don't want you to hold
ruin all your.
priority. Just let me play my cards.
So I like the fact that I can just do the stuff that I want to do,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to break the game by doing it. So
Right.
you
You
can
can
kind of
just
run that
go. Yeah.
hamster wheel in your head.
I mean, I also
And then, of
feel like
course,
that. Oh, I'm sorry. I feel like that also speaks a lot to me. Where like someone's turn is just their turn. You're not like hanging on. It means that the game kind of moves a little bit faster. Where it's like, okay, now it's your turn. Go. And someone's like, okay, I do this. I do this. I do this. I do this. I attack. You defend. Okay, now go. you know.
yeah, and that's the thing I think that I found most enjoyable is
Hmm.
just being able to kind of focus on what it is I want to do while also considering the consequences or, you know, cost associated with those decisions.
Right. There's
Every
yeah.
card is more or less pretty simple, right? You look at two or three or four or five cards, there's not a lot to them. But unlike a lot of other card games, you play more cards. You have more cards on the table and you've got more cards in your hand. So each of those simple options
Right.
kind of multiplies.
Right, and it's nice
And
that
so
there
you,
is a balance of spells that actually cost something, and then these relics, which are for all intents and purposes kind of spells, but they are kind of free to put out. You just have that limited area to put them, though. So it's like, okay, what am I going to get the most use out of if I have two or three of these relics in my hand? It's like, okay, is it worth it for me to have two of
Mhm.
this one, or one of this one, and one of that one? And how am I gonna balance that within my actual spells that generate or use up
And the
my
strategic risk of playing one, right? So you
right,
play a relic and it's really powerful, but how many turns are you going to get to use it before your opponent realizes it's a danger and
right?
maybe
That
you
it's
just take
that
that
it's
out?
broke as heck. Yeah, that's where I was like, okay, I'm gonna play this and then activate it and do my 3 damage, and then if it goes away, that's fine. It did its 3 damage.
Yeah.
Okay. The I guess we talked about this a little bit in the other video. Um, personally, in card games, my favorite part is usually the actual like deck construction and building. So how do you guys feel with the kind of limit of usually only being in one tribe? How varied do the decks tend to be? Is there a lot of that, or is it just like a sousson?
I want to go first on this. Okay, so I've got 4 decks in front of me right now,
Hmm.
and even with and this isn't the full set. This is just what I was able to grab from Gen Con,
Right.
so that I can again take to the local game shop and showcase.
Mm.
But within one faction, I mean,
Mm.
most factions have a theme or two
Mm.
that runs through them, and there's just enough cards where you can focus on one or the other themes. But then there's also stuff that's not generally that's not specific to that faction. So
Right.
like the Dacis are going to have a lot of spellcast, but you'll see quite a bit of that in the machine,
Mm.
and you'll even see a little bit of that in like the pack.
Right.
So if you wanted to run, like you probably can't run a spellcast based pack, but you know you have the option there. So there's some flexibility within each faction to play it straight at least 2 ways if you use nothing but that faction.
Right. Right. And then there are a couple through lines through multiple factions that you could go, okay, I'm going to kind of ignore this Dacis champion ability here. Maybe I'll make sure my territories are all just straight effects. And then I'm just going to go straight spellcast. And then you can go, just cherry pick the best spellcast cards and the best spells. Of note, we didn't particularly talk about this, but the pure spells have no particular tribe pedigree, if you however you want to say it. Like, they can go in any deck, and do.
Right.
So
They're not tribe specific
not
at the
tribe
moment.
specific. There we go. Yeah, that you could do some cherry picking the best spells and then make a spellcast deck that spanned several tribes. Yeah, or any other of the cool abilities. Yeah, you could go. I'm gonna do all
Also,
poison. Everything I have is gonna have poison, or everything is gonna have thorns. You can really lean into
and
that.
that's where you start going multi-faction. Like you could probably do all poison with the Dacis just fine.
Hmm.
But if you wanted literally almost every champion you play to have poison, that's where you'd start looking into like the 1 or 2 machine faction champions that have poison on them.
Right.
I think there's poison something else as well. And so you can cobble things together and create this Frankenstein if you'd like. Or you can take a faction, and like I said, they've got like 2, 3 different lines in them generally.
Hmm.
But once you start looking at relics and territories and you put in, say, the mercenaries, that like multiplies
Hmm.
those lines and
Right.
slight variations. So you get quite a lot of variety out of just one faction from things like that.
Nice. Nice. Did anyone else have anything to add to that, or was that enough?
No, I think that was a pretty that was a good.
That was fairly thorough.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I guess it did.
Let me just go through over my notes. Okay. Just a few more questions now. We're nearing the end. What I guess this is kind of ancillary follow up question, I guess, to an earlier question, which is we talked about what was the impetus of this particular game. Was this particular game what got all of you guys into game design in and of itself? Did you guys have some initial designs on something else? Has this always been something you guys have been interested in, or?
Yeah, so I'll take this, um so I've always sort of been lurking with game design, right? Like
Hmm.
been following like forums, Facebook groups, but um I think the like, initial idea of creating a game like this game that as Nate alluded to, this was years back. So I think it did I think the combination of those two things, sort of lurking and being like, hey, wait a second, I talked about designing a game, you know, a decade ago based on these different elements. Let's sort of marry these two ideas and actually follow through with this idea we had.
So, um, when I was in fifth grade, my buddies and I playing Magic in
Hmm.
fifth grade decided to buy index cards and make our own decks that were like the mole deck, and the moles would make each other stronger and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So the seed may have been planted way back when.
Yeah, I feel like that was a big thing in. I mean, I can't speak to how old you are, or I don't know, but back in like the early 2000s when Magic was like really kind of hitting it big, or not the early 2000s, the early like yeah, maybe like the late 2000s, early 2010s, something like that. I felt like when I was in high school, which I'm trying to remember, that would have been around 2008, 2007. That was this like big thing where there was a bunch of people who were like making their own Magic cards online and being like, "What does this look like? How's this work? How's that work?" And I feel like that's just like this little input of game design that has kind of entered into our generation. That like,
It was a while ago because it when I was in fifth grade, fifth edition was what was out in Magic.
oh yeah, I mean, yeah,
Dating yourself, Nate.
fifth edition, that's some good stuff. Yeah. But I do wonder if it's kind of like this burgeoning with the internet and being able to have like Photoshop just on almost any computer for relatively cheap, or for free alternatives. You know, I use almost entirely GIMP. That the tools are more readily accessible than they ever have been before to just go and make a game.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Like I um started. I've done graphic design for many years,
Hmm.
and kind of like having a good handle on Illustrator to design card layouts and things like that. I mean, it gets tricky when like we hired artists to do all the art. Of course, I think I've done one card, but just you know, that was a whole nother ball game. But yeah,
Yeah,
there is sort of like you could just start playing around.
that was one of my next questions, which is all of this art is freaking awesome. Uh, who did you get to do this art, and how did you find them? And
So, me personally, we both like went off and found artists in different ways, and like what I did was just go onto DeviantArt because I used to put stuff on there for myself, not card art, but just like there are great artists out there on DeviantArt and on other sites, but at the time I would just search for fantasy art and find like awesome artists and cold email them and be like, "Hey, like I'll give you some money to do some card art." And then
mm,
I found a few people that way.
yeah, that I mean, you can't argue with the results. This is you know, short of the penultimate or the ultimate, no, rather, not penultimate, of Magic the Gathering, and when it comes to art on card games, um, this is right up there basically. uh,
Yeah, we appreciate it. The other, and I'll plug Fiverr. Uh,
mm,
so ArtStation. So Nate he mentioned DeviantArt, but I'll also plug ArtStation and Fiverr as other two like great platforms to find really good artists.
mm. Just be like, I need art of a spider. Someone do it for me.
Yeah,
um,
and yeah, there's and that is another great avenue to meet again people from all across the world. Like there's one environment artist from Japan that once she started doing like her first couple pieces were just great. So I'm like, okay, well, can you commission like the rest of these?
right? Like
Then
how
same
many
with the
can you do?
one from Russia. Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of a logistics issue, right? Because some
Mhm.
artists they take a long time and then you just have to. So
Right.
we started this back in again like 20.
Oh,
He's cutting out again,
it's
but
good.
2020.
2020, yes. Oh,
Evan's connection's not so great.
oh
Okay, no,
no.
no, I'm back. I'm
There we
back.
go. We're
I'm
back.
back. I'm here. Good.
Just trying to spread out some of these cards so we can get a good look at some of this, all of this beautiful art.
And we on our website too, we have every like some people. I don't actually know how many people do or don't do that, but like I found a lot of sites where you don't get to see the card game art. You kind of get glimpses of it from
Hmm.
the site or from. But we have we kind of totally knock off from like Mythic Spoiler, but just have all the cards on a page so you can go through everything.
Go through, yeah, look at everything and be like, what is this? And start to cherry pick. Ooh, I would like to put that with that and that with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we're just open on about it. Like if you like it, you like it.
Right. And I think that's a great way to also really pull people in because then they can actually the when there's this many cards, you're never going to know if you like it until either you I mean, you're not going to really know until you play it, but you're not going to know just from being like, you are a person who's casting things and it's fun, we promise. It's like you have to actually start looking at cards and going, okay, how does that relate to that, relate to that, relate to that? How does, start to put the puzzle pieces together and being able to see all of the cards is, a really great first step to starting to get to look at that puzzle. Um, so that that is everything except for my last question, which I'm gonna try to, as I keep doing these, kind of ask everybody either at the beginning or the end. We kind of jumped right into it at the beginning because I was excited and forgot. But kind of the overarching question then becomes, other than your game, of course, what is your favorite game or games, and why?
Goodness.
Go.
Yeah. Pressure, right? Favorite games and why? Evan, I'm gonna let you go first. I'm not sure you want me to bust.
Or maybe not your favorite, but what's your go-to? Like you're having like two or three friends over, and you're like, okay, I can't play my game.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
So, there's a couple, right? So my friend group, we played like Settlers of Catan, like when it first came out, like,
Mhm.
and then we loved basically that same format. So Terraforming Mars is popular one.
Mhm.
Another one that I personally like, and Nate, this is one that Kevin likes too, and it has like a web you can play it online, is Everdell.
Mhm.
And one reason I like Everdell, and I think did a great job of like the the feel of Everdell and like the forest creature sort of red wall really comes across in the game and the mechanics.
Mhm.
And one thing that's nice is it's like an online game now. I know those are two very popular games, but yeah, like Terraforming Mars and Everdell.
So for me, I have a lot of the old classics. Like I was big Magic player.
Mhm.
Pokemon, huge Pokemon player. Up until like the until I think they got sold. The company that first created the game got sold, and
Right.
then Yu-Gi-Oh, um, and board game wise. Oh, and I also really love like Dominion. It's a great game.
Yeah.
So Dominion's another one, and then there was this great game that we used to play. It was very small and tight, and it was just like one deck. I think it was Guillotine was what it was
Mm.
called.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I've heard of that game and I've never actually played it, but my friend was literally over the other day and had a copy with him, and I was like, we should play this, and then we never got around to it.
and my sister brought this game. We played now like during Thanksgivings, and I'm trying to remember exactly the name. Now I feel bad because I forget the name, but
The
it's
survival one.
it's the one where you have to like it's World War II, right? And you're trying to hide if you're like an officer or something like that. I forget.
Mm.
I think it's like Kill Hitler or something like that.
Right.
It's
Yeah, it's a werewolf type game. Yeah, Mafia werewolf, Secret Hitler. There we go. That's the name.
That's the name. Yep.
Dragons. Sorry, I have a thing for dragons in card games, and I just found the dragon card. Alrighty. What about you, Evan?
I think he answered. I think Pierre is the.
Oh, Pierre, yeah.
Oh no, that's right. Yeah, Pierre. My brain. Oh my gosh.
It's fine. You're distracted by the dragons. I
Yes.
understand.
I got distracted by all the pretty art.
So for me, it started with Magic, of course, long ago. I won't say how long. I'm not gonna date myself like Nate did, but
Too
it was
long.
Magic for a good while. Too long, yes.
Yeah,
Especially with like
just
formats.
just to speak to that, me and my friends were hanging out the other day, and I was like, I've been playing Magic for, and then I started to count the years, and I was like, ooh, that's too many. That's too many years. Now I feel old and sad.
See, from Magic, I did a lot of gaming for of various games for a long time, but I did do Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh. With Pokemon was actually the one I kind of liked the most. It was a nice middle ground,
hmm
both with the player base and the play of the decks. But then I moved away from that and I got into, let's say, Sentinels of the Multiverse and Dice Masters were the highlights of my board slash card game experience. Um, Dice Masters, I think, actually plays a lot like this, where you're in your headspace, you're doing your stuff, and then Sentinels of the Multiverse was very, it's a team game. So
hmm
it's you've got a team and you're all picking a deck of heroes that each of you wants to use, and there's some strategic decisions you make in that, and then you're facing an enemy villain, and then the
Right.
environment, and so
hmm
you all have to work together to not lose, and so my friends would come over after school and we just like sit down and try to beat the boss that day. And it was fun.
Right.
A lot of yelling at each other and why'd you do that? Oh my God, you killed me. And
Right. How
so I
dare
really
you? I
enjoyed
was
it.
gonna do. Yeah.
And then I want to say overlapping all that's probably role playing in general.
hmm
More recent years, it's been Pathfinder, but just role playing, tabletop role playing games are kind of my thing.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Thank you for playing. Thanks for answering our hot questions. Um, you guys, as we said before, the Kickstarter is going right now. The website for the Kickstarter and the website for the game will be down in the description. And you guys, anyone who's watching can check them out there. Thank you so much, guys. I'm gonna stop the recording now. Bye bye.
Thank you.